The only thing constant in this world is change.
We as a university seek ways to ameliorate the conditions before us today.
And we continue to adapt to the challenges of this changing world.
A leading Christian institution committed to total human development for the well-being of society and environment. And our education is to be used as a tool for the well-being of society and the only place, the earth, we all live in.
Come to think of it, whole person education was with us ever since we began. It starts with values, Christian values, a seed which is planted in every Silimanian. Our commitment is on fire. Faith, instruction, research, extension.
Whole person education in the university's teaching and non-teaching programs and services. Education for total human development should be sustained as an educational framework.
In Silliman, we strive to offer quality education. And part of the quality education in Silliman is to offer our students a variety of venues for learning. These are what we call the 5 C's of Silliman education. The first C, of course, is the classroom, where students learn and engage professors and faculty who are among the best in the country.
Whole person education as one that promotes multidisciplinarity, inclusiveness, self-direction, and social responsibility.
Responsive to the needs of today.
With liberal arts education, we as an institution provide an atmosphere of inclusion more than exclusion. People of all creeds, people coming from different countries, personal and political orientations, people with different work backgrounds and socio-economic levels can all be a part of a community of learning. The multiple sources of learning here at Silliman that we identify to be the classroom, our athletic grounds, our church, our cultural center, the community in general. All these allow for various perspectives and learning applications that help realize the educational aspirations of all who enter the gates of Silliman.
Sports is integral to Silliman.
The second C would be the courts, the athletic fields, where students and faculty and staff come together regularly in order to celebrate the value of the body in relation to the mind.
Where is multidisciplinarity in whole person education? Subscribing to the concept that education is life necessarily entails that our teaching and learning must go beyond the narrow confines of our individual disciplines. The more collaboration we have with other fields or disciplines, the better we are at approximating the truths we are searching. Promoting multidisciplinarity, linkages, and networks among faculty, staff, and students, as well as interactions between and among academic units and divisions, does not only build skills, but also establish fellowship, harmony among one another.
The third venue for Silliman education would be the cultural centers. Many times in the year, the students are given a dose of cultural activities that will allow them to delve into the sensitivities of the human nature.
As to whole person education and self-direction with social responsibility, Excellence in programs and services provided to students is not an end of itself. It is hoped that the education attained becomes an instrument for a higher purpose, like doing service to others.
Silimanians throughout the years have always had the opportunity to learn directly from local communities around Negros Oriental and even throughout the country.
We have community service, structured health teachings. Not only does it improve our skills, we're also given the chance to give back to the community, serve them, and try to empower them in order to build a better community.
Another major feature of Siliman education is this education of the soul and of the spirit through the church. This is where our students learn of the value of nurturing their spiritual life.
What we have right now is on the pre-computer education for the senior citizen, and it is a 3-year commitment of Siliman and to the community.
Whole person education is not just our commitment, it is our way of life. It is who we are, Silliman University.
Let us now come before the Lord in prayer. Let us bow down our heads and pray. God of wisdom and knowledge, creator of heaven and earth, the faithful and just God, we gather today to share knowledge and expertise, insights, and to learn across the platform of technology. You have encouraged your people to gain wisdom from the challenges of our time. You have given us the gifts to impart knowledge, to reinvent, enhance, and create new possibilities to rediscover disciplines that could foster engagement among leaders, learners, educators, and administrators. You, O Lord, are good for providing avenues, inspiring people, and motivating stakeholders to participate in this endeavor. There is a purpose in everything we do, and how you molded us into the kind of people we are today. We thank you, Lord, for your faithfulness, so generations and generations will know about you. Many will be given insights. Despite this challenging time we are in, we continue to engage and share relevant information, discussion for the benefit of all. May this time of virtual learning through this gathering all bring good fruits to all who participate, to be informed and educated from various topics presented today for progress and development. May the individual contribution and those who initiate and make this webinar possible, we give you thanks and praise. May all that we do and continue to plan bring glory to your name. You are with us, O God, from the time of planning, preparation, and so we ask for your presence to be with us all. We give thanks and praise to you, O Lord, through your Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen. Friends, the Lord is good and mighty indeed. As we are gathered here in this platform, yet we continue to encourage, innovate, share wisdom, share knowledge and expertise through this webinar. Indeed, God has blessed us with a mind to discern His will a skill to cultivate, and these good attributes will be beneficial to all. Welcome to this webinar, Featuring Leadership, Visionary Visits of the Future. And may our time be fruitful and meaningful, not only for us to learn anew, but to take in the direction of action. A blessed day to us all. Welcome.
It is with great pleasure to introduce to you our theme keynote, Dr. Solomon Diaz, PhD. Dr. Diaz is originally from Fortaleza, Brazil, but has been living overseas for almost 25 years. He received his master's degree in international education in the USA and a PhD in international relations in South Korea. His master's thesis was based on the Korean model of education and development. His doctoral dissertation focused on international cooperation with a comparative study between Mercosur and the ASEAN. As a university professor, Dr. Diaz taught at several universities, including Johns Hopkins, Princeton, and the Loyola Marymount in the U.S. Dr. Diaz also taught at the Gyeonggi Hanguk University of Foreign Studies and at the Kyunghee University, both in South Korea. His teaching foci included the following: Introduction to International Relations, International Labor Market, International Politics, International Human Rights, Ethics, and Asian Politics. He is currently the Director of Alumni and International Relations at Chadwick International Songdo Campus in South Korea. Dr. Diaz has served various positions in the Korea Council of Overseas Schools, or KORCUS, including the position of President. KORCUS is the oldest association of international professional educators in Korea. He is also the founder and president of 3 other organizations in South Korea. These are the Songdo Free Zone Foreign Advisory Council, the Seoul Honorary Citizens Council, and the Brazil-Korea Association. Dr. Diaz is a member of the Academy of Social Sciences of Brazil. Let's welcome Dr. Solomon Diaz to keynote on this webinar's theme, Featuring Leadership.
Our world is again at a turning point. We already know that knowledge and learning are the basis for renewal and transformation. But global disparities and the pressing need to reimagine how, why, what, where, and when we learn mean that education is not yet fulfilling its promise to help us shape peaceful, just, and sustainable futures. My name is Solomon Diaz. I'm speaking here from South Korea. I'm very, very pleased to be part of this conversation with you all and share a few of my thoughts on how we together can reimagine our futures, doing our job as educators, serving our population of students and teachers and administrators that work with us. In our quest for growth and development, we, human beings, have overwhelmed our natural environment. We all know that, threatening our own existence. Today, very high living standards coexist with gaping inequalities. More and more, we see every day, people are engaged in public life, but the way I see is the fabric of this civil society, all of us, and democracy is fraying in a way in many places around the world. It's very clear today what is happening in East Europe. Rapid technological changes are transforming many aspects of our lives. Yet, these innovations are not, in a way, adequate to provide equity, inclusion, and democratic participation. Everyone today has a heavy obligation to both current and future generations to ensure that our world is one of abundance and scarcity, and that everyone enjoys the same human rights to the fullest. It's our job to guarantee that. Despite the urgency of action and in conditions of absolute uncertainty, we still have reason to be full of hope. As a species, we are at the point in our collective history where we have the greatest access that human beings have achieved to knowledge and to tools that enable us to collaborate, to help each other. The potential for engaging humanity in creating better futures together has never been greater. So I'm here to share a few of my understandings and thoughts of how the different futures, I would call, of education. And the main question I would like to ask is, what is the role of education in general can play in forming or shaping our common good and shared futures as we look ahead in time, 20 years from now, let's say 2050 and beyond? The proposals presented in a way, or the ideas that I'm presenting, I guess they form from different experiences that I've had, that I've seen, that I've read, dealing with children, youth, and adults, colleagues. And I truly believe that we are all connected, right? And we share knowledge, we share the planet we live in. And this is very, very important that we work together, regardless of where we are, what we do, our positions and jobs as educators. So I think many people like us are engaged in bringing about those changes themselves. I guess, if we can provide some form of contribution on everything we do, right? To reimagine learning spaces, the schools we work at, or places we go and share our experiences, to, in a way, change the way we see, for example, curriculum, right? And the importance that we should give to emotional and social learning. So I guess this is something that we all should reflect on a daily basis on what we do, right? And I get when we see, climate change, these threaten to democratization in the world, global crisis, we're still in the midst of one 2-year-long pandemic, all the fake news and this, with this digital divide, that the gap is widening. So how we deal with those challenges? Well, we all know education, the way we organize teaching and learning throughout life, has long played a foundational, I would say, role in the transformation of human societies. That has always been the case. It connects us with the world and to each other, expose, in a way, this form of education to new possibilities, and strengthens our capacities for dialogue and action. But very important, to shape peaceful, remember, just and sustainable futures, we must, in a way, so education itself must be transformed. And that's how I would like to continue my thoughts. So we sign many contracts in life, apartment contracts, job, work contracts. We live under contracts, we pay taxes and all that. Well, let's look at education as this social contract, this implicit agreement among members of a society, all of us, to cooperate for shared benefits. So for me, a social contract, as I call it, is more than a transaction that we all have to deal with as citizens, as it reflects norms, commitments, and principles, right? That are formally, in a way, connected to the cultures we're in. So I see this starting point is a shared vision. So if we can get to that level to share a vision of, purposes of education, we all agree what education is all about. What is it serving now and in the future? So this contract, right, has as basis those principles of a structured education system that we all have to follow, depending on where we are, as well the distributed work done to build, maintain, and refine them. So, in the last century or so, public education in many different places was very essential to support national citizenship development. I live in a country that, as you all may know, that if it's not for education, they wouldn't have achieved so much progress. So based on education, they reached such a high level of development. So, but that was based on compulsory schooling for children and the youth, right? So today, however, we face grave risks to the future of humanity based on all those challenges that I mentioned before. The planet itself is at risk, right? So I believe we must reinvent education in a very urgent way, as we are all trying to change, climate change, global warming, and all that. I think education also, we don't have much time to do so. So we must rush in a way and do it well. So this act, as we call reimagining, means working together to create futures that are shared and interdependent. So this new contract, as I'm calling the social contract for education, must unite us, not divide, around very important collective endeavors and provide the knowledge that we all need and innovation, right? As a consequence of this effort is to create something new and shape sustainable and peaceful futures for all of us, anchored in social, economic, and environmental, as we talk about the environment, justice. So, and of course, we are the champions as teachers, as educators to do, we all believe in changes, right? We're very hopeful for the future. So I'd like to mention two, I would say, foundational principles. One is that we must assure quality of education. I think we in the few decades or so, everyone was worried on quantity, right? Schools being built to provide education, formal education to everyone. I think now it's time for quality, right? It's not much of numbers, but the level of education we provide. So assure quality of education throughout life, right? This long-term planning of providing education. So that's one, the right to education. As it's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All countries, in a way, follow that declaration. So it must continue to be, so we remind that that has been signed so many years ago, but continue to be the foundation of this, any new social contract for education. It must be expanded to include the right, to quality education, not just education, providing some knowledge, but the quality of that education needs to be guaranteed throughout our lives. So it must, of course, encompass the right of information, culture, science. When an art gallery opens its doors to visitors for free, when museums provide tours for free to citizens, or a very, very minimum cost because they need to maintain their projects if they're not subsidized by the government. So we should support them, but that's how that knowledge, that information, that culture, that science is being shared with everyone. So that is very, very important. So access, free access to that knowledge, collective knowledge resources of humanity that have been accumulated over generations and are continuously being transformed. So assurance of quality of education throughout life. And number two, another principle I think it's very important is to strengthen education as a public endeavor and a common good. So we all appreciate that. As a shared societal endeavor, project, education builds common purposes and enables individuals and communities to flourish together, right? So everyone has access to that education. If we look back in history, the countries that had not provided education to all, it was very easy to control them. And that's why military dictatorships for so many years in so many places were in a way governing their citizens very easily. So having access to education, of course, brings changes. So a new social contract for education must not only ensure public funding for education, which is really, really important, but also include a society-wide commitment to include everyone in that process, right? In the discussions. So we involve teachers, we involve parents, we involve former students, our alumni, so important to what we do. So provide feedback and help us to grow and improve the programs we offer. So this emphasis on participation is what strengthens education as a common good, a form of shared well-being that is chosen and achieved together. So those two principles I think are very important. Quality of education throughout life and this strengthening education as, a public endeavor and a common good. So I would like to go now into a few things that I think, we had past promises and uncertain futures, right? We don't know what's happening tomorrow. The jobs we have today may not exist in the future, and the jobs of the future are not here yet. So the widening social and economic inequality, climate change and all that I mentioned, biodiversity laws and resource use that exceeds our boundaries, right? What we're experiencing today, this democratic, backsliding and disruptive technological automation and people losing jobs and all that. So it's the hallmarks in a way of our current historical juncture. These overlapping crises and the challenges and in a way constrain our individual and collective human rights and have really damaged in a way much of life on earth, as we all know. While the expansion of education systems that has created opportunities indeed for many vast numbers that have been left with very low quality of learning, right? So things in many places are actually changing. Technology in a way has helped to provide a bit of access, although it has also in a way provided with all the fake news and fake information that I think we should all be very careful with. So, we all know no trend is destiny, right? So I think there are multiple alternative futures possible. So I would like to mention a few things, a few areas, key areas that I think we should all be looking at. Number one, the planet it is the way it is, right? We look around and see all the challenges we have. At the same time, we see this, we call the greening economy, right? So people are more concerned about the environment, and we see electric cars, the alternative sources of energy and things like that. So it's important to keep that in mind. So children and youth already are leading the way. So they are our hope, right? Calling for meaningful action and delivering a harsh, rebuke to those who refuse to face the urgency of the situation. Still, people don't believe in reality, right? So I think they are leading the way, and they will lead the way. So if it's a future, a scenario that I think we will see more and more participation of the youth that is very, have more access to information, and they're very dissatisfied with the status quo. Another aspect, over the last decade or so, the world has seen, this, what I mentioned, the backsliding of democracy, democratic governance, and a rise in identity-driven populist sentiment, nationalism. At the same time, there has been a flourishing of increasing active participation. So when people go on the streets and they film themselves and share with the world right away, live many times, those protests and their, in a way, public demonstration of dissatisfaction, I think it's important that is happening as well. Activism that is challenging discrimination of injustice. So, from one side, again, another aspect, we see this problematic, democratic governance, but the other side, we see that activism has become a bit more worldwide spread, right? I guess also if we talk about technology, we don't know what is coming next, but what we know is there is already this tremendous potential in digital technology, but we have not, I think what is missing is figured how we can deliver those advances to everyone. I think it's always going to be, the pandemic has forced educators around the world to use technology, right? It was the only way, but it has also created a technological divide, right? Those who can, those who cannot, those who have access, those who do not. So I think we always have to keep that in mind. And the last point in terms of those key areas, the challenge of creating decent human-centered work is about to get, I guess, much harder, complicated. Think about artificial intelligence. Are they replacing us? And what is the role of education and educators in that aspect? Automation, right? And structural transformations. They remake employment landscapes around the globe. We see some classes, some classrooms without teachers. At the same time, more people in communities are recognizing the value of care in multiple ways. The economic security needs to be provided, right? So we see, those two aspects. The first one I mentioned, the world facing so many challenges from an ecological point of view, from all the threats that we face. And at the same time, the youth trying to lead the way and make changes. Another aspect, political, we see this democratic, very challenging scenario in many places around the world, but also activism. Then, of course, this transformative digital technology just growing, and at the same time, the challenge of creating this digital divide. And the last one, of course, was dealing with this, the challenges that we may have to our the job we do every day, but at the same time, they may help us to do a better job as educators. So I think this social contract that I mentioned, it's just forcing us to make us think differently, right? So I'd like to propose a few things, and I will conclude my thoughts. Number one, pedagogy, what we do should be organized in a way around the principles of collaboration, cooperation, and solidarity. That's what we're doing right now. We're sharing our knowledge. We're not getting a high stipend for spending time discussing, sharing these ideas. But we do with so much love because we know the importance of collaborating and helping each other. So number one. Number two, I think our curricula really need to emphasize this ecological, intercultural, interdisciplinary learning. So we need to change that. And everything is so connected. And that, as consequence of that, would be the production of knowledge and developing our capacity to criticize, to look around and find and ask questions, right? So changing that curriculum. I think teaching what as educator should be further professionalized in a way as a collaborative endeavor where teachers are recognized for their work as knowledge producers and key figures in educational and social transformation. So yes, it's very important that we find respect, that people show appreciation, but we need to be at the end of the month recognized and respected so that we have a quality of life as well. So governors, right, or those in positions of power must recognize that we are knowledge producers and key figures in that process. Number four, I would say schools should be protected educational sites because of inclusion, equity, and individual and collective well-being that we support. So schools must be prioritized in a way. They should be places, the first thing, and I come from a country that it is the case, where every time they plan a new development, a new neighborhood, schools are the most important space for providing that quality of education to everyone. Everyone is equal. And the last one, the fifth one, I think we should enjoy and expand the educational opportunities that take place throughout life, any different cultural and social spaces. So help each other, so cooperation, collaboration. Number two, as I mentioned, we must change the curriculum so that it will reflect all this interdisciplinary learning. Third, we should be, as teachers, as educators, fairly respected and understood and perceived as knowledge producers. Number four, schools should be the priority, the spaces in which this learning process happens, schools, universities, I'm including all levels of education. And number five, this education, this process should take our whole lives. So I'd like to conclude my thoughts just saying that we must reimagine this future together. As I said, we are all here to learn from each other. We have so much to share and yet so much to learn. And that is a long life, the whole, let's say, the time we have on earth to share and to learn from each other, to, in a way, try to make the world we live in a better place. I wish everyone a wonderful time learning and sharing with each other in whatever way and means we may have. And God bless us all. Thank you.
It is a great honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Betty Cernal Macan. Dr. Macan assumed the presidency of Silliman University on the 1st June 2018 as the 13th and first woman president of Silliman University in Dumaguete City, Philippines. In January 2019 to December 2021, she served as president of the Association of Christian Universities and Colleges in Asia, or ACUCA. She sits on the board of the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations, or COCOPEA, in the Philippines. She is a registered psychologist with the Board of Psychology of the Professional Regulation Commission of the Philippines and a certified specialist in social psychology, or CSSP, by the Psychological Association of the Philippines. Her professional interests revolve around higher education, service learning, environment and stewardship, gender and society, participatory management, and whole person education. Dr. Macan served the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia, or UB-CHEA, in various capacities. First, as Associate Director at the Hong Kong-based Asian Christian Higher Education Institute in 2002 to 2006, then as Program Director for South Asia, and finally as Vice President for Programs in 2007 to 2013. Please welcome Dr. Betty Cernal Macan with her presentation entitled Preferred Futures of Leadership.
In the wake of the coronavirus pandemic in early 2020, Christian higher education institutions had to assess the disruptions, reflect on the changes, and adopt immediate strategies to tide us over from the old to the emerging realities obtaining in our universities. Initially, our institutions embarked on strategies that were meant to address pressing concerns in the here and now, and for the most part, we adopted individual school initiatives. Eventually, as Christian institutions got more immersed into the situation, there was a realization that the current problems obtaining in educational institutions necessitated joint efforts, that we can be stronger together in addressing the demands of the present-day educational scenario. In the spirit of cooperation and togetherness, Silliman University stood with the Association of Christian Universities and Colleges in Asia, or ACUCA, an association composed of 70 colleges and universities in 9 geographical locations in Asia. Together with the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia, a New York-based not-for-profits working with over 80 institutions of higher learning in South and Southeast Asia and in North and Northeast Asia, we held a joint virtual consultation symposium in July 2021, pursuing the theme, Envisioning Christian Higher Education, Our Preferred Futures. We had valuable lessons and insights from that gathering. We felt a need for solidarity in confronting the pandemic challenges. What are the preferred futures as envisioned by Christian higher education institutions? In that joint consultation, there was a consensus that the preferred futures of Christian institutions of higher learning must have the following essential elements. 1. Education that is anchored in the precepts of harmony among fellow human beings towards God and with the environment, as articulated in the traditional Balinese philosophy of life Trihita Karana, and in other similar sources of wisdom in other parts of Asia. Second, an education without borders and for all striving towards equity of learning, maximized access and inclusion of all young people from different backgrounds, including genders, religions, ethnicities, classes, and castes. Third, an education committed to continuous improvement, aligned with Christian and spiritual values to include an integrated curriculum that address issues of environmental sustainability and stewardship. Fourth, changing models of learning and deliveries, faculty development, and student participation. Fifth, an education that banks on greater collaboration among institutions and constituencies for sharing of resources, expertise, learning, and research to address problems in our societies together, including the digital divide faced by learners in disadvantaged communities. And finally, a green campus aimed to be carbon neutral with green infrastructure and green technology. It is incumbent upon us to embrace all these realities and set out a path towards our self-chartered preferred futures as Christian educational institutions. The future in education requires new skills sets. These skills requirements need to be addressed now. As we march on into the new marketplace of education, we must carry with us a basket of knowledge and competencies propped with formidable positive attitudes, values, and Christian traits. Embracing our preferred futures means acceptance of the realities before us, having some knowledge and skills to deal with our weaknesses and bank on our strengths, a capacity and means to go about with our intended outcomes, and staying on course to get the job done. Christian higher education institutions are one in their calling to the teaching ministry. While they are one in heeding this special call, they may take different paths to reach the common goal. Colleges and universities in South and Southeast Asia, in North and Northeast Asia, and those others in Asia and the Pacific regions may chart their educational journeys in ways different from one another as they have unique strengths, structures, and missions. Thus, the journey towards preferred futures may have us all focus on a common destination, but the paths we take may be plotted in ways unique or peculiar to each institution. What are the guideposts as Christian institutions embark on a journey towards preferred futures? As is said, to get through the hardest journey, we need take only one step at a time, but we must keep on stepping. In the life of our own institutions, we can have an inventory of those little steps that can take us farther along our chosen paths for our preferred futures. Some of these steps. Upskilling and reskilling. Professional development in teachers and support staff is a highly important investment for schools. We must keep our teachers abreast with new competencies to navigate the digital age of teaching. As teachers cope with hybrid or remote learning, the provision of quality, continuing professional development should be an ongoing area of focus. As teachers get more stretched with instructional preparations, building educational foundations for success in this changing school context, improving learning outcomes through inclusive education. Our school and college managements need to place more attention on the provision of quality, continuing professional development. Online learning is here to stay. Using technology to propel collaborative engagement and learning is upon us. After almost 2 years of adaptations in this pandemic era, we have a wealth of reflections we can draw on to make learning more engaging, no matter the mode of delivery. Embracing the best parts of established classroom practices with digitally enhanced activities is a good path forward. The shift to online and hybrid learning is causing teachers to update their classroom style and to keep new tools and ways of teaching picked up during the pandemic. They have acquired some level of confidence to try out new ideas, to engage students, to collaborate with their colleagues, and to use technology to engage our students. Accelerating or fueling unique growth potentials within our institutions to meet educational goals in the next decades. Some institutions have reported scaling up some of their program initiatives in lifelong learning, such as integration of vocational technical certification programs in professional courses. Others have promoted cross-border online graduate education programs, such as graduate courses in public health management, educational administration, coastal resources management. Still, others have strengthened their technology and business incubation programs, such as in technopreneurship or in invention and creative designs, all found to be in tune with the needs of those about to enter the workforce or the labor market. With more students combining knowledge with technological skills as they pursue economic independence, we may yet see our colleges and universities as fertile ground for young companies, not simply to hand out graduates with bachelor's degrees. Leading sustainable futures through research, innovation, and renewed commitment to service. In reviewing curricular programs, research agenda, and community outreach activities, higher educational institutions can do no wrong in aligning with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations. giving focus on any of those goals, say goal number 5, gender equality, or goal number 3, good health and well-being, necessarily lead us to working and finding appropriate programs and strategies related to all other SDGs, such as quality education, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, climate action, life below water, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships for achieving these goals. One issue that Christian institutions can rally together is on the issue of climate change, as responding to this concern will undoubtedly benefit from collaboration among many other institutions. We now hear of a net zero campus, which would mean that campus consumes only as much energy as it produces, balances water availability and demand, and eliminates waste sent to landfills. We also have institutions promoting carbon sequestration measures in agriculture, protecting the oceans, or vigorously setting up bamboo farms, or planting indigenous or endemic tree species. Each institution can do more to address global sustainable development goals through their teaching, research, and community service. A renewed call for attention on indigenous knowledge in this period of the digital age. In pursuing our educational goals, we in the Christian institutions have indeed so much to learn from the earth-based spirituality of the local cultures in Bali, for example, or the Igorots in the Cordillera region in North Philippines and in other places. Such earth-based spirituality demonstrates indigenous peoples' profound love and care for nature, and a belief in the spirits that dwell in nature. Such a belief among the Igorots, for example, is deeply associated with a faith in the Creator of all that exists. In this fast-changing world, a renewed respect for traditional knowledge and local wisdom can enrich our appreciation of local cultures. The interconnectedness of the spirit world and the physical world. Reimagining the campus and its services. Adopting new ways of managing school operations, such as restructuring the learning organization by putting into place learning management systems and designating full-time dedicated personnel to administer them, setting up e-libraries, online enrollment transactions, health checks at the gates, establishing milestones in vaccination rates on campus, or re-examining new approaches to investing and balancing revenues and expenses, as well as balancing health and safety with other school priorities since the start of the pandemic. Ensuring that students and teachers can thrive and excel with wellness and emotional support, especially in remote learning. Mental health initiatives in colleges and universities with referrals and peer support need to be in place. Programs of care for all members of our academic community can make for a healthy, resilient, and productive setting where each one can obtain a better quality of life, pursue individual choices, and contribute towards a life-affirming environment. Many of our member institutions have taken up this responsibility seriously and are worth our emulation. Activating partnerships with nonprofits, government agencies, alumni and friends, mission boards and churches, and other bodies that share the belief that education is the key to good citizenship, national development, and protection of the planet. The ACUCA, AXCU in the Philippines, Thai Kuka in Taiwan, Ayache in India, and other country-specific networks of Christian schools have to be mobilized for concerted action on priority interests related to our Christian identity as institutions of higher learning. We may well be reminded and affirmed by the earlier steps we have taken in pursuit of our objectives as an institution of higher learning, COVID or no COVID. We have set out to arrange for conferences, consultation, and programs of similar nature. We promote and facilitate exchange of faculty, staff, and students among member institutions and with other universities. We foster service learning projects as well as Christian character development activities. We support faculty and staff development, and we seek cooperation with and enlist the support of foundations, mission boards, business communities, governments, and other organizations and agencies that are concerned with higher education in Asia. We have already taken several steps in the past. We can continue to take more steps in keeping with our embrace of our preferred futures. In summary, in these identified steps toward preferred futures at Christian higher education institutions, a reviewing of programs like academics, administration, services from the lens of Christian mission in the context of rapidly changing educational environment is of paramount importance. Of equal value is an active mindset for welcoming people like our faculty, students, staff, alumni, and partners in our colleges and universities as strategic players in our institutional plans for moving forward. And not to be overlooked in this journey is the finding of ways to maximize the power of partnerships within and outside our educational arena. Thank you, and God bless us all in our educational ministry.
It is a great honor to introduce Dr. Ben Malayang III, currently Emeritus Professor, Institute of Environmental and Marine Sciences, Silliman University in Dumaguete City, Philippines. Dr. Ben is the immediate past president of Silliman University. During his presidency, the university experienced many excellent upgrades, not only in the academic aspects, but also in the aesthetic profile of the institution. Dr. Ben served as chair of the Association of Christian Schools, Colleges and Universities, or ACSCU, and of the Coordinating Council of Philippine Educational Associations, or COCOPEA. Dr. Ben's presentation is entitled The Constant Readiness of University Leadership. Please welcome Dr. Ben Malayang III.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Let me share with you today some thoughts and personal reflections on readiness and leadership in academia. First, let me make some disclosures. Most of what I have to say here are based on my experience in about half of my full-time professional life, years of full-time professional life, in three aspects. One, as the president, the recent president of Silliman University from 2006 to 2018. And then number two, as director of an institute that then became and dean of the School of Environmental Science and Management in UP, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. UP Los Baños is a public university, and Silliman, of course, is a private university. But I also like to think that some of my thoughts were also based on some experiences, about 5 years, heading a international team of scholars from different universities and research and development institutions in the world to write and prepare a chapter of the Millennium Assessment of the state of the planet at the turn of the century. So from these experiences, however limited that might be with respect to some others who have had more extensive experiences, I draw some of my thoughts on this. So let me start by making sure that we are on the same page on certain concepts. First, the concept of readiness. Formally, it's supposed to be a noun and defined as a state of being fully prepared for something. It also refers to one's willingness to do something. But from this, these are my take. One, when you say readiness, it implies that one knows A, what to prepare for, B, the odds, the probability that an event you want to be preparing for will in fact happen. And C, you know the resources and the processes needed to prepare for an event. And 4, you also know the odds that one could be amply prepared. These are 4 basic competencies that allows you to embark on a state of readiness. But it also includes the fact that one is able to act and to mobilize resources and processes to achieve optimal state of preparedness. Optimal, not maximum, not minimum, but optimal. Meaning to say, in my view, you cannot be really fully prepared because you have certain constraints to being able to do so, such as you want to have this kind of equipment, but you just don't have the budget for it. You want to have these kinds of, say, fortifications against risks, but you just simply don't have the people, the talents, and the resources, the money to prepare for them, or the engineering available to prepare for them. So optimal rather than maximum. And then it also means that, to me, readiness means you keep on reassessing the preparations that you already have. It's a never-ending process of one, knowing what to prepare for, knowing with what you have that you can use to prepare for it, and the odds that what you prepare for and your preparations can actually achieve optimal results. And then two, knowing the resources that you have, and then actually taking action to being able to do these preparations that you have. So 1, 2, 3 in my illustration here, and it keeps going on and on as a cycle of constant readiness. Leadership, on the other hand, has been formally defined as also a noun, the action of leading a group of people or organization. It's leadership, leading. But from my personal take, again, based on my experience, persons in position to legitimately exercise these functions within a group of organization, leaders are those persons who have the legitimacy to exercise these functions of leadership within a group of organization to pursue agreed visions, missions, and goals. Legitimate because one can take the role of a leader without the formal mandates of being designated so, but by sheer power of personality and ideas, you become the de facto leader of people or an organization. That's our powerful circumstances, and usually leaders of such kind are effective, except that when push comes to shove and there are problems, the question of legitimacy usually impedes the continuance of their ability to lead. So these are the functions of, I think the functions of a leader in terms of in terms of an organization or a group of people. The leader must inspire, provide guidance, but when push comes to shove, must have the ability to issue commands. The leader decides on allocations and use of resources or assumes the final accountability over decisions on the allocations and use of resources. The leader himself or herself does not personally decide on these things because there are usually processes that have to be done. And the leader capacitates others. But usually the leader is the face of a group, which sometimes would be needed, especially when there are representations to be required of certain institutions. But the most important, again, I'd like to stress this, the leader assumes final and ultimate responsibility and accountability for the actions of the people and groups or organization on which he or she leads. Now, let me talk of academia, which is a kind of a more complex concept in as far as I'm concerned. Formally, it's defined as the environment or community concerned with the pursuit of research, education, and scholarship. Quite straightforward. My take of this is that it is a community of persons in a place or across places. They are not necessarily always in just one place. It could be across many countries or many institutions within the country. But they all share a common purpose to acquire, to interrogate, to demonstrate, and to share knowledge. These are persons who produce knowledge, who probe knowledge, perform, demonstrate knowledge, and provide knowledge to others. They share knowledge in service of truth and humanity. So this, I have this little chart here, producing knowledge, meaning generating new ideas, new information, new ways of doing, valuing, and managing things. Probing knowledge means to interrogate or to question the viability or the strength of current ideas, information, and ways of doing or valuing and managing things. Performing knowledge means to demonstrate and test under different conditions. If you talk of agriculture, planting this kind of plant across different conditions of aridity or moisture lack or surplus, and terrain and soil types, etc. And see whether or not what you know about the plant holds under different conditions. In the case of the humanities, new knowledge, new thinking can be demonstrated by way of new movements in the arts, new ways of putting together some musical scores, and new ways of using color to work towards a common message. So these are performing knowledge. And providing knowledge is to share demonstrated and tested ideas, information, and doing things. This is usually called teaching. So these are the four events that constitute an academia. And people need not be in the same place. Now, let me just clarify that a little bit more. Academia means research, instruction, and service. But research actually is not only to produce knowledge, but it's also to produce knowledge and demonstrate whether that knowledge works or not. So the research encompasses producing, probing, and performing knowledge. And then service means performing the knowledge, but at the same time, sharing that knowledge. Similarly, instruction is sharing as well as sharing what was demonstrated and sharing what has been produced and probed, knowledge that have been already. So academia is really a very close interaction of these activities. That's the reason why I say academia seems a little bit more complex as a setting for managing people. Now, so generically, any academia, to me, or setting, would be a complex, would require complex needs to be able to do those four functions of producing, probing, performing, and providing knowledge to others. And these complex needs of academia can even become more complex and more intensified if one aims for excellence. For the first need of academia would be people, quality people, people committed to the vision, mission, and goals of the pursuit and production, probing, performing, and the provision and sharing of knowledge. High quality people that are usually very specialized, but at the same time, because of the intricate interactions required of the functions of academia of producing, probing, performing, and providing knowledge and sharing knowledge. These are people who are not only specialized in their fields of studies and disciplines, but are able to appreciate the value of other people's specializations and why they are needed in order to enrich their own. So people would be a first need of academia, and by itself, people are a complex human beings are usually complex, especially talented human beings, in terms of providing leadership within the context of a community where people like this dominate the place. And of course, in order to have people, in order to do the functions, I think that at the core of what is needed by academia, especially among private institutions, would be three things. One, of course, money, to be able to acquire the logistics needed to do the functions of academia. Two, time, because you cannot say, in the case of people, you cannot just say that the people you that will join you at any given time will have to permanently use only the talents and the capacities that they had when they joined you. You have to give them time to learn and give time to the institution to provide them support in order that they are able to expand their competencies. So time is very important. And in order to have this, you have to have friends. If you were a private institution, this is critical. Friends would be the people in the community and around the university and the school who will be ready to be there for you when you need it, and who believe in your vision, mission, and goals, and who so believe in them that they are ready to share their own resources to support the achievement of your vision, mission, and goals. Friends are very critical because they are the ones that provide you the facilities, including the money. In the case of public institutions, you will still have to have friends among the leaders in government, the leaders in the bureaucracy, who will have to be friendly to you, quote unquote, in order to facilitate your availment of public funds and resources to support the vision, mission, and goals of your academic institution serving the broad general public. So friendship, cash, money, and time. After people, these are the three ones. But this having cash and friendships and time will allow you to, of course, the next critical need of academia would be literature, books. These are not just the volumes that you have in your library. The importance of books is that it provides you a continuity, a treasury of the knowledge that are already available and that has been developed and produced, tested, and performed across time. It provides a continuity of the learning process since as long as possible before you. And so this enriches. Fundamentally, this is the lifeblood in terms of the intellectual life of the university. Books. But let me clear you, it's the information contained in these books, not the physical books themselves. And so if this can be translated into new modalities of containing and keeping and storing knowledge, it need not be that. But I just use the books because that's the symbol of knowledge that is already available to humankind. The next one would be, of course, where do you house the books? Where do you house the people? So buildings would be very important. And the buildings need not be just simple four-corner things. They need to have functionality. So buildings that are intended for return demonstrations of students' capacities of absorbing lectures have to be properly designed for such a purpose. Those buildings that need to handle toxic and hazardous waste have to be designed, such as laboratories and where chemicals and reagents are to be stored, and all of these things. Where you have experiments using complex ICT equipment, you have to have buildings that have very clearly fortified for electrical disruptions and voltage irregularities. So these things, buildings are specialized in terms of their design. And the next one is energy, because of course without energy, you really cannot use your buildings, and you cannot allow your people and the people in academia to function as they need to. And remember that in a complex community like an academia, your requirement for energy would be 24/7. Then, of course, you need equipment. You need the tools to facilitate the learning processes, the research processes. I just use here a representation of a computer because that's the most common tools now in offices as well as in the classrooms of academia. And then you would also need maintenance. Maintenance is critical. Sometimes they are looked down as the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the ladder in terms of importance of people in academia. But I don't think I really have to invite you to rethink that kind of notion, because These are the people who will allow your building to continue functioning, your energy supplies to continue being there, and your equipment to work, and your books to be secured, and all that. So very critical component is maintenance. And you have to afford medical and health services because you are supporting people in academia. You have to make secure the quality of life and the well-being of the people in the academic community. And you have facilities such as conveyances that is needed, some often very needed because students have to go out into the field from time to time. Maintenance will require carrying heavy loads. Books are to be transferred from one library section to another library elsewhere in the campus. All of these things are necessary. And of course, and the more important that usually people don't realize is you need resources to be able to comply with regulations. If you have to have a building, you have to have extra resources to make sure that that building complies with the standards of construction, that you have certain ratio of classroom space per student, and all these kinds of regulations that we must meet, including health standards, safety protocols, security measures, and all that. So this makes it a complex logistical situation or setting. Academia is a complex setting for logistics and support for creativity and functionality and the services provided by people. So in addition to things being needed, there are processes that need to be observed in academia. In the case of deployment of money, time, and friendships, you have to have processes, intricate processes to maintain good relationships with your friends and alumni, your students, your parents, the government regulatory agencies. These are processes that are to be done, protocols, etc. Scholarship to allow faculty to go out and develop further and expose themselves further to the wider community of scholars in their fields. These are processes to do that. The deployment of money is a very intricate process in academia because everybody's needs have to be met at the very least that they would have to need, although the problem always is that you don't have the money that everybody would meet everybody's needs in academia. So that's a very intricate process itself. And even the relationships between production, probing, performing, and sharing and providing knowledge, all of these have processes as well. We know about curricular development that needs to go through certain processes in the academic councils, the university councils, the dean's conferences, and all this, and sharing of research results among the community of scholars, related community of scholars, also will require processes, preparing papers of equality that will be acceptable to the community of scholars that you are working with. So these things are all complex interplay of logistics and providing the needs of the academia as a community of creative and talented people. Now, to me, leadership in academia must be able to anticipate black swans. Black swan events are an unpredictable event that is beyond what is normally expected of a situation and has potentially severe consequences on the human, logistical, reputational, and existential well-being of the academic institution. Black swans can happen that will disrupt your flow or inflow of money, income, such as donations from friends, tuition from students, And black swans could happen in your research processes, your extension processes, your teaching processes. And that is the leadership, because people in academia are very busy performing their tasks and their interest within the setting of the institution. The leader must be able to provide the mechanisms that regularly the institution itself looks for possibilities of how and what events might happen to disrupt these things. In research, it could happen that long interruptions in power supply might disrupt the culture of bacteria and other microbes that are being done in the laboratory. Or what you call this, certain processes that will take time to look at some computational requirements of research. So you are doing some computations that takes about, say, 2 or 3 days, and then while you're about to end that the series of computation, you lose power. It had happened before, and you have to do your experiment again. In the case of UP Los Baños, I knew of a process that had to have 6 months, and then at about the 5th month, we lost power for about over a month. So that's the situation. So these are black swan events that we need to be prepared for. Now, a black swan event involves risks and vulnerabilities. Risks refer to the likelihood that a damaging black swan event would happen. That's risks. Vulnerabilities refer to the degree that an entity at risk would be actually damaged when a black swan event happens. Now, if it were just one black swan, fine. Perhaps one can really prepare for that, but you cannot prepare for only one black swan event. It could happen that certain black swans can happen together or immediately after each other. I call that the perfect storm. Perfect storm is a reference of 1 or 2 storms or typhoons or cyclones fusing, merging into one big typhoon. There was a movie with this title of A Perfect Storm. So a perfect storm in terms of risks and vulnerabilities is when 2 or more of these black swan events happen at the same time or one immediately after another. That is something to really prepare for, because the accumulated negative impact of black swan events, if the institution is unprepared, would be very calamitous to the academic institution, where continuity of processes is a very critical thing to maintain. The research process has to continue, the probing process continues, and the performing process have to take time and have to continue. Teaching have to be a continuing process. And when disrupted by black swan events, a lot of these could be very, very damaging. So, leadership in academia simply means, to me, not doing these things by yourself, but rather mobilizing and facilitating collective efforts in the academia itself, and sometimes mobilizing friends from outside academia, experts from outside academia, to together achieve efficient, effective, and sustainable vision, mission, goal outcomes. We need to have collective efforts to do that, and to be always ready for black swan events that derail achieving the outcomes. So, in academia, leadership means teams, people working together towards, on the one hand, achieving the VMG of the institution, but at the same time, while looking for ways to make sure that you are achieving that, inherent to that is to always be on the alert and ready for black swan events that could derail all efforts to achieve the outcomes. So that's what leadership in academia is. It's not leader, it's leadership. A leader is a person, but leadership is a phenomenon, a capacity of an institution to be able to mobilize and facilitate collective efforts within the institution and including the outside environment and community of the institution, for the institution together among the people involved and all its resources available, achieve effective, efficient, and sustainable vision, mission, goal outcomes. But at the same time, at the other side of this coin is to be always ready for black swan events that could derail achieving the outcomes. This is leadership in as far as I'm concerned, and as I see it myself based on my experience. Leadership is a two-sided coin. On the one side, collective efforts to achieve the VMGs of the institution. On the other side, collective efforts to always be alert and ready for black swan events that could derail achieving the outcomes. Without one side or the other side, the whole coin loses value entirely. Now, what is my take, my own views on readiness in academia? To me, my view is that readiness is a present imperfect event. Present imperfect event, meaning you're ready now and should be and will be ready always. Number two, it must be evidence-based. Readiness is anchored on facts and on robust analysis of two things. One, analysis of past, present, and likely future events, and how the events may shape the risk and vulnerability profile of an academic institution or elements and parts or features of that institution. It could be events that could affect the whole institution or only its research part or its extension part or its instruction part, or anyone, even one single person in that institution, be that person be a custodian or a senior faculty. All of these have to be carefully thought out that everyone in the institution are safe and have the ability to perform the very interest they have in that institution, academic interest they have in the institution. And two, continuing analysis based on facts on talents and resources that are likely available within the institution to strategize, to plan, and execute measures to lower the risks and the vulnerabilities, and to put in place systems, logistics, and decision-making processes to mitigate a potential risk event and lower vulnerabilities to such an event. And to me, the third aspect of readiness is that it is a continuing cycle of risk and vulnerability assessments, a continuing cycle of planning, continuing cycle of reviewing existing plans, and a continuing cycle of redesigning black swan readiness measures, especially for perfect storms of black swans. This would be the scope of what would be readiness, at least in my view, of academia, and the role of leaders in academia to mobilize the entire academia, inspire the entire academia to provide opportunities and enable and empower people and resources within the academic institution to be in a state of readiness. Now, I'd like to give a very clear example of an attempt to be ready. This is based on my experience in Silliman, and it shows the successes and the failures that went into this process. Sometime in 2010, a political decision by the national government was done. There was a commitment to go into K-12, 2010, and so we needed to make sure that we would be ready for K-12, and what that meant. That would mean, in our anticipation of K-12 from 2010 to about 2016, when it was to be put in place, to be started, the program, we saw that K-12 would increase the prospects of curricular and teachers' competency and loading transitions, meaning there will be changes in the curriculum, changes in the required teachers' competency, and there would be expected changes in the loading of teachers in terms of their academic functions within the institution. And so there will have to be some transitions to be prepared for. We also saw that there would be an increased prospects of enrollment transitions, meaning the change in the profile of our enrollment by colleges, by units, by other, by degree programs in the university. We have to prepare for that. And then, of course, we needed to prepare for what we saw would be increased prospects of prolonged income and cost transitions. The whole budget cycle of the university and budget presuppositions of the university, the fiscal assumptions of the university have to be radically altered and changed. While we were into this K-12 preparations, the Bohol earthquake happened, Yolanda happened, and the Zamboanga siege happened, and so so based on Philippine Hazards Map, the IPCC reports, the Philippine Climate Change Action Plan, and political decisions that we look at what this meant to the university. It meant increased prospects of prolonged class disruptions. This happened in Bohol when the earthquake came, and then followed by Yolanda when Yolanda came, and then of course in the Zamboanga, which was very clearly very localized than the Bohol earthquake and the Yolanda. Still, it meant increased prospects of prolonged class disruptions, the traditional face-to-face class disruptions, and increased prospects of higher cost-to-income ratio will be, because in academia, you have to maintain the functions of research, extension, services, and teaching, and you cannot afford to lose the talents that you already have in the academia, and yet, you know, the prospects, the fiscal profile change, but the needs will not change. So these things led us into identifying the new needs of the university. We need to have, we have to be prepared to provide support for students' curricular and cost transitions. That's one. We need to provide support for faculty transitions in faculty loading and tasking, including their curricular preparations and responsibilities. We, of course, needed to redo facility utilization. We needed to do fiscal reprogramming and to provide and have some systems to support new pedagogies of learning delivery, which we identified as residential on the one hand, when students are able to be in the classroom, and remote on the other hand, when, like in the case of students in Bohol and Yolanda or in Zamboanga during the siege, students cannot go to the classroom. How might we continue their ability to, for our faculty and our staff to be able to provide the learning process to continue in the event of these Black Swan events happening in the future? So based on that, we had our menu of responses. There were preparations for what we call academic re-landscaping. We planned how the academic profile and programs of the university could be re-landscaped, especially with the accommodation of the first 2 years of grades 11 and 12, adopting new student support and recruitment strategies, and then rebalancing our income cost numbers anticipated. We needed to come up with new income and savings measures, how to put in funds that could be tapped whenever there would be sudden loss of income from tuition, without needing to do away with any of the talents that we already have in the university. With new income measures, such as putting together a new institution that could provide more short-term income cycles, like in a case of Silliman, the School of Agro-Industrial Technology. And then recalibrate our facility utilization, which facilities could be used also for this, also for that. And then we, of course, we needed to at least design and prototype some remote learning systems. So what happened was, with these new needs, we were anticipating that we will be ready for a disturbed academic life and landscape, be more ready to address more cost than incomes from 2016 to 2022, and to be able to survive a disturbed fiscal landscape. But with these responses, we anticipated that it will increase the resilience of the university, meaning to say lower its risks and its vulnerabilities, even if not entirely zero, because you see, we have to aim for optimal readiness rather than minimal or maximum readiness. So this is what happened. But then Black Swan event came, COVID. Of course, with the plans already in place for the non-COVID scenario, much of those things can be immediately utilized to respond to the COVID scenario. For example, with the leadership of a new president, the university was able to immediately mobilize the university to contend with having to control COVID infections within the campus. And with the able leadership of our medical leaders in the university, there were maximum efforts that could be expected, so that we were prepared to handle situations, COVID situations that could affect our constituency. But you see, before then, we did not include that in our we did not anticipate COVID to happen. There was a failure to foresee that kind of situation happening. We foresaw K-12, we foresaw what disruptions could do, but not so much a very long disruption such as COVID, which is at least 2 or more years. We had some disruption on the health related, like when there was a Ebola scare, and we had some measures to control entry and ingress into the campus in order to control possibilities of spread of infection. We had that, but at the same time, the university utilized more and better ways of handling the COVID situation. So you see, even how much you try to prepare, there will always be black swans that you cannot prepare for. So I say that in that regard, we prepared for as much as we could up to 2018, but then thanks for the new leadership, they were able to immediately respond to a black swan event that happened 3 or 4 years after the planning cycle that we had done, the preparation cycle that was done before 2018. And then, of course, there's Ukraine now, where you have you have a situation where costs and the economy of the Philippines might be affected by surges in prices, and the ability of our students to be able to pay for formal education would be limited. And so these are the kinds of things that we need to always be humble enough to say that much as you want to do the best you could, there will always be black swan events that you are not prepared for or you failed to anticipate. And so to be prepared for that, generically, you just make sure that at all times, the university as a community of scholars and a community of talented people with some resources available to them will always be ready itself, not the leader, but the community itself, to immediately respond to black swan events or even to events that have been properly anticipated. Black swan events could be anticipated, but there are black swan events that one could just simply not anticipate. So that's the situation. Thank you very much. I hope these were helpful reflections on leadership and readiness in the university. Thank you.
It is with much pleasure to introduce Dave Seseda, founder and director of the Seseda Youth Lead School. Dave travels the world to help develop young leaders to hone their communication skills and to attain balance in the goal of wellness and wholeness. Dave has studied in the universities of Europe, Asia, and the USA, including Harvard. He has interacted with great and modern thinkers, including Howard Gardner, the proponent of multiple intelligence. Dave frequently travels around the Philippines as well, working closely with the Department of Education to help train educators. Please welcome Dave Seseda.
Good day, everybody, and shalom. Greetings from Jerusalem. This is Dave G. Seseda, and I'm the chair and founder of Seseda Youth Lead, and I'm very pleased to be part of this intellectual enterprise on futuring educational leadership. The organizers and Dr. Lavinia has asked me to share my thoughts on futuring leadership for the betterment of living in challenged times. So I hope that you'll be with me as I'll go through my presentation, sharing with you my thoughts on futuring educational leadership. I'd like to start and begin my presentation with a question on why do we need to become good leaders? Why am I called to be a conscientious leader? I guess the very important answer to the question is that our society is constantly pregnant with many problems. It's pregnant with many social iniquities. Today, we still see women being raped. Children and girls from age 10, 11, and 12 are abused, and some are getting married to 25 to 30-year-olds, part of their cultural dictates. And you still see these girls as child brides in provinces of Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, and even some parts of the Philippines. Today, you also see that many of our children are dying because of malnutrition, starvation, and other diseases. Our society is pregnant with many ills, such as extrajudicial killing, corruption, prostitution, unemployment, COVID-19, and there goes a geopolitical problem right now we see at the Balkans, okay, and we have Ukraine and Russian war, and the real threat of climate change. Why there is a need for leaders and for institutions to constantly create other leaders. Why there is a need for our institutions to make leaders as change makers and as influencers. And why there is a need for our institution to create leaders who can inspire humanity to do good. I hope that this first presentation and the first slide will open doors to everybody's mind and hearts that indeed it is quintessential to understand the magnitude of the problems. Thus, futuring educational leadership is of prime importance. In the 10th and 11th century, I hope my history can still validate my facts. The world has already seen ignorance. Socrates always said that there is only one good, and that is knowledge. And there is one bad, and that is ignorance. And when ignorance enveloped the world in the 10th and 11th century, we all believed that there were two fake news. We believed in two fake news, that the world was flat and the earth was the center of the universe. No one dared to challenge the day. No one dared to travel north, east, west, and south, or they might fall. No one questioned why the earth was the center of the universe, because whoever questioned it, you have to know that the greatest defender of such fake news was the Catholic Church and the papacy. And we believed in that. But yet, as time went on, people come together and they've realized that they have to put their differences. They came with their knowledge on little things about the world, and this became the foundation of institutions. And so, in the 11th century, the first university in the world was established. This was the University of Bologna in Italy. The convergence of these people allowed them to question dead knowledge, to question authority. And because of this, there was a significant geopolitical achievement of mankind, and that was the Renaissance, the rebirth of learning. And because of this rebirth of learning, there were so many developments and achievements that have been achieved by humanity. And that includes the strengthening of education and knowledge. Now, I appreciate the people living in Europe before and even until now, because they constantly do researching about other possibilities that were not there before. And one of these few good men that I'd like to share with everybody is the man named Marco Polo. And this guy heard about many stories of Shangri-La. Who would ever think that there is Shangri-La, which is now China? And so he walked for 3 years, passing through the many provinces and the other regions, going east. And of course, he was able to explore and discover that there are other animals, that there are other peoples in other parts of the world. And there are also very important regions. And one of the specific regions I'd like to share is the discovery of the Central Asian region. Of course, we know that now is Silk Road, of which the countries of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan are their former Soviet provinces. But when the Soviet Union collapsed and communism collapsed in 1990s, they were able to earn their independence. So Marco Polo walked for 3 years going east, lived in China for the next 3 years, and went back to Venice in the next 3 years. This remarkable journey of Marco Polo inspired many Europeans that there are other people in the world and there are other places that has to be discovered. And so during the 14th and the 15th century, we've seen the rise of exploration and discoveries. And the two superpowers at this time were the countries of Portugal and Spain. These two mighty kingdoms in the Iberian Peninsula were at the forefront of exploration and discoveries. And may I present to you the first man that, of course, I really appreciate because of his great leadership is the person named Christopher Columbus. Okay? When the world was divided into two by the papacy, all lands going east shall be owned by Portugal, and all lands going west will be owned by Spain. Through the Treaty of Tordesillas, the world was divided into two. And so Christopher Columbus was able to convince the royalties of Spain, and he was given funding. An expedition sailed crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and Christopher Columbus reached the shores of Hispaniola, which is now Dominican Republic. Of course, he found Cuba and of the rest of the world, the New World, which is now the United States. Now, during the first arrival of Christopher Columbus in Hispaniola, he was able to meet the first hurricane of his time. There were no hurricanes in Europe. So the first typhoon was already recorded during the landing of Christopher Columbus. So he was able to add knowledge to the entire world about meteorology and weather patterns. And because of this, other other people follow through, being inspired by the leadership and the vision and the courage of Christopher Columbus, and they were Francisco Pizarro, Hernando Cortes, and Vasco da Gama, who were able to explore South America and India. Now, as I've mentioned, the Europeans were really good in research. And when Captain James Cook sailed from United Kingdom to find new lands to the east, his expedition was also peopled with doctors. And along the way with their voyage, they were able to find out that there are medical concerns and diseases that come out from the persons because of the lack of food. And Captain James Cook expedition was able to discover that scurvy is actually just a deficiency of vitamin C. And the greatest achievement during his expedition was, of course, the discovery of New Zealand and Australia. And they were able to find that there are different kinds of people, and they were called indigenous peoples or the Aborigines, but they were all decimated also because of the exploration and the discovery. And so with this, another person came in, and that's Fernando Magallanes, who came all the way from Spain to the Philippines, and his expedition has actually circumnavigated the world. But just very sad that when he reached the shores of Mactan, there was a fight between the local chieftain Lapu-Lapu. How I'd wish I would have been the ambassador of goodwill at the time. I could have probably prevented the death of Magellan because I'll be able to bridge the communication gap. Okay, communication is a very important element in leadership. And I think futuring educational leadership would require a very important skill, which is, of course, communication. Now, these explorers and gentlemen probably did not really go to very formal school. They probably learned through apprenticeship. They did not learn the setups of navigation and exploration. As an apprentice, maybe they've learned from experience. And so, if you compare the universities before and today, of course, the universities today are more progressive. They're more progressive because of the collaboration, because of the accreditation, because of partnerships, and because of other non-governmental and governmental funding available. Before, there were none of these. But the graduates of the universities before came out with great courage, with super leadership, with great vision, with determination to lose sight of the shore in order to find new lands for humanity to benefit from. And so this is the kind of futuring educational leadership that I'd like to see beyond the 21st century, because I believe that institutions are created to help humanity make positive contributions for the world. And so institutions like, of course, Silliman University, where I graduated, its motto, the Via Veritas Vita, the way, the truth, and the life, I always carry it with me. My short stint at Kokusai Kirisu Tokyo Daigaku, the International Christian University in Tokyo, Japan, opened my mind and heart to the many adventures of life. The world has so many things to open, and the world is actually waiting for everybody's intelligence. My graduate studies in Europe at Universidad Alfonso El Sabio and Comillas Pontificia Universidad in Madrid provided me with greater inspiration to know more about diplomacy and international relations. And my executive program at Harvard University ushered a new meaning for me for leadership, and for Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in West Africa, where I've learned my skill in conflict resolution, decision-making, and balance. I would like to see myself getting to other institutions of learning to refine my other skills, to refine my heart so that I can become a positive contributor to national or even world development. Now, I believe that education focuses on intelligences, and these intelligences are coupled with skills, both soft and hard. Professor Howard Gardner is the author of Multiple Intelligences, and I'm very fascinated with the multiple intelligences. But when I met him in Harvard, I had a chance to talk to him, and I mentioned to him that I will contest his idea on his intelligences. I mean, his theory in multiple intelligences. And I think he has 9, and I told him that I will have 8. And he asked me why I have 7. And why 7? Because I think there are 7 days. Of course, there are 7 days of the week. There are 7 colors of the rainbow. There are 7 continents of the world. And 7 is just my lucky number. So you see here, the first intelligence that I've placed is linguistics. This is the ability to read, write, and speak. Everybody can read, everybody can speak, but not all can read and speak very well with greater influence. And the higher skill, you have interpreting, translating, negotiation. This is very important in international relations and diplomacy. The fact that we've seen the shattering of peace in Europe where Russia has invaded Ukraine. So the higher skills are very important. So this is a challenge to universities and even high schools, that our graduates have mastered their soft skills. And at the university level, and the professionals will have to master their hard skills. Now, along with the development of the soft skills, hard skills, and the higher values, come the very important element of the understanding of what educational system is. In my first book, Ills Outweigh Thrills, The 7 Deadly Sins in Teaching, I have described the Philippine educational system like a bridge, and each of the columns there represent the elementary, secondary, tertiary, TESDA, and CHED. But I'm very sorry to say this, I think the educational sector in the Philippines, they are not united in terms of principle. And that is why I think we need to overhaul the educational system of our country, that the mission of education is primarily to teach and to educate so that we can graduate men and women with correct skills and values so that they can become not just blessings, but solutions to the many problems we have in our country. Moving forward, education should be blended with empowerment. And I really admire students involving themselves in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I like to see students getting involved with the Red Cross, learning about first aid, CPR, emergencies and disaster management. I like to see students getting involved and polishing their music and arts. They can sing, they can dance, they can play a musical instrument. And I love students that they are also involved in sports, because I believe in the Greek statement which says, mens sana in corpore sano, a sound mind should be in a sound body. So when I was in grade school, I joined the Dumaguete swim team and eventually was being part of the Silliman University varsity swimming team. So I was the team captain of the SU varsity team. And I am grateful for the coaching and mentoring of the coach of the swimming team before, because he taught me discipline. He taught me to be self-reliant. Now, moving forward, as we look within, we now see new explorers and discoverers, and they're presenting themselves as presidentiables for the 2022 elections of the Philippines. But what are the requirements to be the president? And who among them can increase my privileges as a Filipino? Will I continue to receive disaster recipes like noodles, rice, and sardinas every time a typhoon comes, or even when another pandemic comes? Will it still be the same? Will the next president continue to make Filipinos to be government dependent, or will he or she challenges the Filipino to be self-reliant? And will he or she make the Philippines safe and great? These are questions I'd really like to ask. And of course, the educational sector will have to assist in the achievement of a better and safer Philippines. Now, futuring leadership for the betterment of living in challenged times is a statement. It's a very challenging statement. And Nelson Mandela will always say, that education is the most important tool to resolve conflicts in this world. And I'm a strong believer of that statement. And notwithstanding, I think education in the Philippines needs to be overhauled, and it must be taken as a priority in the next administration. Education develops leaders who will bring us all to a better and safer future. So I know that all of us in this platform, we all have skills. We all have our heads, but all of this will stagnate, die, lest we put them to good use. I know all of us here in this platform have unlimited potentials. Only a portion of our brains we employ, and a paltry of our nerves we flex. But 100-fold or more shall we increase our accomplishments of yesterday, and that we shall do beginning today. When is the future? Today. Again, when is the future? The answer is today. If we want to have a safe and better future, we have to do it today. Thank you very much for having me in this intellectual enterprise. I hope I have inspired you all in this short presentation of futuring leadership for the betterment of living in challenged times. Thank you very much for your cooperation and for listening.
Our next presenter is Dr. Elvie Organista Nasvic. Dr. Nasvic is a graduate of the degrees Bachelor of Elementary Education, Master of Arts in Education major in Educational Management, and Doctor of Education major in Administration. She served as a school principal for 5 years at the Balanced Achievement School of Excellence Incorporated, a private school that served learners in the province of Negros Oriental, Philippines. Dr. Nasvic is the current chairperson of the Teacher Education Department of Silliman University. She supervises the policies and programs for the department and teaches professional education subjects. She also handles courses in the graduate program of the university. Dr. Nasvic is a founding member of the Philippine-Kenya Education Network, PEN, and the Negros Island Teacher Education Synergy, or NITES, whose aim is to synergize teacher education institutions in promoting quality education. She is a regular member of the Philippine Association for Teachers and Educators, PAFTE. Also, she is a charter member of the Dumaguete Toastmasters Club, a club that enhances communication and leadership skills affiliated with Toastmasters International. Dr. Nasvic's presentation is entitled Futuring Teacher Education. Let's welcome Dr. Elvie Organista Nasvic.
Good day, everyone here and around the globe. My name is Elvie Nasvic, and I'm going to share with you a talk on futuring teacher education. As the world changes to embrace the future of teacher education, what we teach and how we teach in our educational system will also be reshaped to keep up to date with the growing demands of the 21st century. So allow me to share with you how education evolved. So this is the evolution of education from education 1.0 up to education 4.0. And here, let me explain each evolution briefly in my next slide. For education 1.0, the concept of a teacher standing in front of a room full of students who listen and respond to directions is increasingly a thing of the past. Students go to school to get an education from teachers who supply them with information, and this is done through lectures. And then students learn through rote learning and memorization. So this is more of a teacher-centered approach. The teachers or administrators decide what is most important to the students for them to learn even if it's not so interesting to them. The teachers also focus on achievement test scores to evaluate progress. And then teachers here deliver content at their pace and in their way, and students will learn if they can. So moving on to Education 2.0. Here, communication and collaboration are starting to grow, and technology is used in basic ways, such as wikis, podcasts, blogs, personal website, which enables learners to interact contents with one another. And here, teachers adjust how and what they teach so that it gives students the best chance for success. So it's more of exam-based approach. And for Education 3.0, this is more of a knowledge-based education. And students here are the center of the teaching learning approach, and then are the teaching learning situation. And the teachers serve as facilitators and coordinators. Since it's knowledge-based education, a flipped classroom method is applicable here, wherein teachers give resources in advance for the students to do research on their own, and then they come probably if face-to-face is allowed for a deepening session, or it can also be done through online. So there's more dialogue in this approach, and technology is everywhere. And with the term lesson plan, which we used to call it, in this Education 3.0, we call it learning plans. So that's Education 3.0. Moving on is the last evolution of the present. It's more of cooperation and innovation. So whatever are the contents and the skills learned in Education 3.0, that is carried over to this approach. So there is also an increased use of virtual reality. This is the time where artificial intelligence and robotics are being used. So in our university, we don't have that yet. So that means we are not into this approach, but towards that. And there is a continuous evolution and innovation. And learning happens whenever and wherever there is technology, when there is internet. So there are also other major trends of Education 4.0. First, it is more personalized learning. So when students are given a task, they can create and innovate through their critical thinking, the output of the task assigned to them. And they're learning, they make it more meaningful for them. And there's more opportunity for remote learning, and with a plethora of educational tools, this will make collaboration and cooperation more meaningful for students. So at first they wonder how they can collaborate with their classmates, but with the use of breakout rooms in Zoom, with the use of Jamboard activities and Google Meet and Docs and other tools, quizzes, poll everywhere, Mentimeter, there are a lot. So you can just check on what's appropriate for a particular lesson to make use of the tools, and then you apply it. So it's more of self-learning for students and for teachers as well. But of course, we do upskilling activities where we attend seminars and workshops in order for us to be equipped with these tools that we'll be using for online distance delivery. And then data are at our fingertips. Now, if we look for a content, we Google the terms, and then there are a lot of information that we can gather at the click of the button. So then there is that easy and accurate assessment. So with the use, with our experience with the use of our virtual classroom, assessments are done online, and the system will check on itself. We just have to program. And then a project-based learning is also one of the major trends of this, where students are given something to think of, maybe to interact with the community. There is something that they will work on, and there is networking, so they can do collaboration between and among their peers, their classmates. And this is also true to teachers. And then in addition to what Education 4.0, we said that students' learning spaces will really supersede the typical classroom that we know. And then this will also see that students become partners or co-creators of their own learning. So in research also, we can collaborate with research projects with our students, and they can do in the teacher education. The new trend also with the new curriculum is for the students to come up with a classroom-based action research. So with this, they are trained how to conduct research and see really what interventions they can do to help, what problems are being seen inside the classroom during their internship programs. So there are experiences that allow collaboration, communication, and teamwork for all students happen beyond classroom walls. So this can be done online, as I mentioned. And we need to facilitate these experiences in context, and our classrooms need to be a reflection of this. So as teachers, we need to be very creative also in designing teaching and learning virtually. Then, since there is collaboration on projects, and they will have their spaces online and flipping the current model upside down. So as I mentioned, advanced readings could be shared to the students, and then for them to look for important insights about a topic, and then they will discuss it through question and answers and reflections during synchronous sessions. So we do have synchronous and asynchronous sessions in our virtual classes. What else? With the things that they learn, the skills that they learn, the collaboration, cooperation, it must be meaningful and are applicable to their real life situations. So what then now is the future of education? So education, in the future, as I mentioned earlier, gets information at our fingertips, and we can also make use of gadgets. We command, if we search, we ask Siri, what is this? So there's that voice command, and we need to equip really our students with the 21st century skills, the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. I would like to add one more here, as I experience in an online distance learning, another C, which is care. So we need to care for our students also. It is because it will really help in our communication with them and knowing their well-being. So we must share that love and care to our students. So as the world of information is at our fingertips, technology is really very important. It is no longer a motivating factor when it comes to learning, because it is a must. It is something that needs to be incorporated in the future of education to ensure that students are equipped with the skills to cope in a world dependent on technology. So education in the future will need to demonstrate how technology can be used to students' advantage, as well as teach future generations how to handle problems that arise from it. So technology can change learning forever, and we need to embrace it and manipulate it at our advantage. So as education changes to suit the future's needs, the role of the teacher must also adapt and grow. And it is each teacher's responsibility to empower students to take risks, to be innovative, and seize any opportunities thrown their way. Considering a shift towards a more personalized learner experience, we must prepare teachers of the future to be data collectors, to analyze this data, planners collaborating with the curriculum experts, synthesizers, problem solvers, researchers, and many more. So in order to prepare also our future graduates for work, schools, colleges, and universities must align their teaching and processes with technological advancements. Teacher education institutions must evolve and accept that changes to some traditional processes are inevitable. So that is where education will be going. So let me end this presentation with a quote by Malcolm X, and I quote, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." So that ends my presentation. God bless everyone.
To render a synthesis of takeaway keys from this webinar is a privilege. The formula 5WH is a simple but powerful one to use. I need to be concise, and this formula allows discipline on brevity. First, the question, why? Why is it important to envision the future? Dr. Saul Diaz shared his thoughts about the foundational principles of education that spell the responsibilities of educators around the globe. First, the principle of quality education throughout life. Secondly, the principle of strengthening education as a shared societal project. Dr. Saul's thought on education of the future now is that it is a social contract. This contract includes provisions on pedagogy as a collaborative effort of worldwide educators. Solidarity is key. Curricula should be interdisciplinary that allows change to happen as questions are asked by both learners and teachers. Educators should aim at higher levels of professionalism. Interdependence goes hand in hand with solidarity. To be ready to face the challenges, according to Sir Dave Zaseda, may not be totally complete, but that the human capital is equipped to create ways to thrive in challenge times. Futuring does not need to be age limited. Futuring is a composite skill that can help build preferred settings of life. Silliman University President Dr. Betty Cernal McCann makes visible through her wisdom the values needed to adapt to any challenging situation, COVID or no COVID. Collaboration, vital partnerships, inclusion, research, continuous improvement, health for the human capital, care for the environment, upskilling and reskilling, being adaptive, and most clearly, in educational institutions of higher learning, keeping learning engaging. To find the alignment of these may be on varied unique pathways for each institution, but the goals are similar. Collaboration among profit and not-for-profit organizations is one of the keys of adaptivity in any challenging situation of learning and living. Dr. Ben Malayang III is very clear about readiness being a constant in strong leadership in academia. The challenges to face in academia include happy events as well as undesirable events that Dr. Ben calls the black swans. When is the future? Today, now, is the best time for futuring. Visionary leadership can help design citizens of the future that can lead without bias, with strong determination to succeed and to stand head to head against obstacles. Educators can help prepare citizens to be future ready. Dr. Nasvik reiterates the essentials of futuring teacher education because teachers help the learners carry the future, to nourish and to let it flourish. Upskilling is key in both hard and soft skills because the needs of education keep evolving into wider and deeper horizons from the first to the fourth level of education in its dynamic evolution. Who are our candidates for future leadership? Age does not have to limit our choices. Neither should educational attainment be a limit of our candidates if they have the qualities to tackle challenges for the benefits of many. Dr. Makan presented Preferred Futures of Leadership, in which the mindset is focused on real-life issues aligned with Christian traits. Designing preferred futures of leadership is among the responsibilities of current leaders to help the would-be leaders. It is not the leader, but the leadership. The world is full of opportunities. It is our curriculum of life's preferences. What are the skills needed for powerful futuring? Courage, self-reliance, flexibility, balance with firmness, readiness for anything that may happen, knowing one's capabilities that can be combined through collaboration with other leaderships. All these are mere words, but when transformed into action, they make the world better. So where do we begin? Here, and where you are is just as good as anywhere that we can explore to change what and who need to be changed, while knowing first why. How can we help our young generations to bloom as leaders that are not afraid to fail in order to succeed? Develop soft and hard skills. The big data is already within reach. Our young generations need to redefine hope as they construct their preferred futures collaboratively. Future-ready leaders can communicate well. They use both soft and hard skills to get across their messages. Future-ready leaders make great things happen in and for the world. These leaders make visible perspectives of excellence. Our expert resource presenters have discussed all these within the same perspective of dealing with the future now. Profuse thanks to Dr. Betty Cernal Makan, Dr. Ben Malayang III, Dr. Solomon Diaz, Sir Dave Saceda, and Dr. Elvin Nasvik. Thanks to the Reverend January Alberto for the invocation and warm welcome. Thanks to our co-sponsors, especially Dr. Dave Marshall, Sir Fredley Bucock, Sir Stephen Binaro, and their technology teams. Here are the main takeaways. It is not just the leader, it is the leadership that orchestrates collaborative and collective efforts to manage challenges, to know the resources and processes needed to countermeasure the events that affect the vision, mission, and goals of the whole system. Leadership makes change happen for the betterment of life. Leadership inspires humanity to do good things. Leadership is a social contract, the provisions of which are our shared responsibilities. Leadership inspires the emergence of new conscientious leaders. Leadership discovers and seeks the truth. Education is the backbone of any nation's economy. Education must be pure, accessible by everyone, inclusive, unadulterated, and non-political. Educational institutions need to produce visionary leaders with soft and hard skills working with life's Christian values. Research expands advancements in the development of leaders. The future is now. The future is today. Profuse thanks to the Reverend January Alberto for the invocation and warm welcome. Gratitude also goes to the webinar sponsors and co-sponsors, the ASEA Honors family, now renamed as ASEAL Honors. Thanks to the Silliman Online University Learning, or SOL, with the dynamic leadership of its director, Dr. Dave Marshall, to the design technologist of this seamless broadcast, Sir Fred Lee Buckel and his team, to the resource professionals that have donated their expertise, visions, and dreams. Dr. Betty Cernal McCann, the 13th and first woman president of Silliman University, Dr. Ben Malayang III, Emeritus Professor and immediate past president of Silliman University, Dr. L.V. Nasvik, Teacher Education Department Chair of Silliman University, Sir Dave Seseda, founder and director of Seseda Youth Lead School, and to our active donor in all our past webinars and this time as our theme keynote, Dr. Solomon Diaz, Admissions and Alumni Relations Director of Chadwick International, Songdo Campus in South Korea. Gratitude is expressed profusely for the co-sponsorship by the Korea Council of Overseas Schools, or CORCUS, the Philippine-Kenya Education Network, or PEN, the Negros Oriental Private Schools Organization, or NOPSO, the Silliman University Church, and the Negros Island Teacher Education Synergy, or NITES. As your webinar organizer and sponsor, together with ASEAL Honors, it is my great pleasure to serve as enabled. Thanks be to God. May I encourage you to use the presentations in your teaching or trade and industry meetings, especially in relation to your case studies. A citation template is provided as guide for articles that may cite a specific presentation or the webinar as a whole. Blessings.